Day 2 of USA team basketball has begun. Caitlin Clark is still in the midst, and women's basketball is definitely back.
When the doors closed on Team USA's practice gym, the whispers started before the first ball hit electricity. Day 2 wasn't supposed to matter. Day 2 was supposed to be routine. And then cath floor. Cameras were banned, phones sealed, and egos pressed against the walls like Caitlin Clark detonated it. She didn't walk in loud. She walked in focused, jaw set, eyes cold, carrying the weight of every debate, every doubt, every headline that tried to shrink her game into a storyline. The first drill cracked the silence. Threes splashed from distances that felt disrespectful. Passes sliced defenses that didn't exist yet. Veterans glanced at each other. Assistants stopped writing. The room tilted. Possession by possession, the pace bent to her will. She called sets without raising her voice. She demanded the ball without asking. When pressure came, she smiled, the dangerous kind, the kind that says keep coming. Aya Wilson tightened up. Kelsey Plum stared. Aaliyah Boston braced. The hierarchy everyone assumed began to wobble. Then the scrimmage started, and the noise inside the gym spiked. Clark hunted mismatches, punished hesitations, and turned chaos into rhythm. A logo 3 drew gasps. A no-look dime sparked a shout. A step back over an outstretched arm froze time. Coaches exchanged looks they didn't want caught on tape. Outside, the world still argued. Inside, the truth was forming. Day 2 didn't just change rotations. It threatened roles, reputations, and the script itself. And when practice finally stopped, who pays the price? Long before Day 2 cracked the gym open, Caitlin Clark learned how to survive rooms that didn't want her to win. The noise didn't start with Team USA. It started years earlier, in packed arenas and quiet offices. In praise that came with a catch and criticism that felt preloaded. She grew up turning doubt into fuel, but the cost was always there, humming under the surface. Every record came with a qualifier. Every milestone came with a debate. She wasn't just asked to be great. She was asked to be palatable. College turned her into a phenomenon, but it also sharpened the knives. Crowds loved her range, then questioned her swagger. Analysts celebrated the points, then dissected the confidence like it was a flaw. Rivals circled games against her as statements, not competitions. Angel Reese brought edge and bravado, Paige Buchers brought grace and expectation, and Caitlin brought a fire that refused to dim. The comparisons weren't fair, but they were constant. She learned to smile through them, to answer politely, to let the box score speak even when the conversation wouldn't. The WNBA arrival multiplied everything. Cameras got closer. Opinions got louder. Every glance became a clip. Every gesture became a narrative. Teammates felt the gravity shift, some inspired, some threatened, most unsure how to stand next to a spotlight that hot. Veterans remembered earning respect slowly and bristled at the instant attention. Coaches praised her work ethic in private and warned her about tone in public. The message was always the same: be great, but not too much. Team USA carried its own history, a lineage of dominance and hierarchy that didn't bend easily. Roles were inherited. Minutes were understood. Leadership followed seniority. Caitlin walked into that culture aware of every unspoken rule, aware that one wrong moment could label her forever. She didn't want to disrupt. She wanted to contribute. She kept her head down on Day 1, passed early, defended hard, absorbed contact without complaint. The chatter didn't stop. Behind closed doors, the pressure mounted. Assistants talked about fit. Veterans talked about experience. Pundits talked about translation. Caitlin talked to no one about the ache in her chest when she heard it all. She watched film late, replayed reads, adjusted angles, imagined counters. The quiet became her ally. The ball became her language. By the time Day 2 arrived, she was done waiting for permission. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. She understood something others missed. Excellence doesn't announce itself. It arrives, takes space, and dares anyone to move it. She didn't want to challenge the hierarchy. She wanted to clarify it. The practice plan that morning looked ordinary. The stakes did not. Every drill felt like a referendum. Every rep felt recorded, even without cameras. She felt the eyes on her, some curious, some cautious, some calculating. She remembered every headline that framed her as a problem to be solved instead of a player to be unleashed. She remembered the smiles that hid discomfort. She remembered being told to tone it down. So she didn't. She chose precision over volume, patience over flash, then flipped the switch when the window opened. The gym responded before the staff did. Energy lifted. Pace sharpened. The game simplified around her decisions. It wasn't dominance as spectacle. It was dominance as control. And control is what scares people most. Because control forces choices. It forces coaches to answer hard questions. It forces teammates to renegotiate roles. It forces organizations to confront narratives they built for safety. Caitlin knew that once you show it, you can't unshow it. She knew the price would come later. As the session ended, conversations started forming that wouldn't include her. Calculations began. Texts were drafted and deleted. The realization settled in that day 2 hadn't been a hot streak. It had been a signal. And signals demand responses. Walking off the floor, Caitlin felt the room shift behind her. Not applause. Not approval. Something heavier. Something consequential. And she knew the next practice wouldn't be about basketball at all. The tension didn't explode right away. It simmered, creeping through hallways and whispered conversations, turning glances into assessments and smiles into masks. By the next morning, the building felt different. Not hostile. Calculated. Caitlin sensed it the moment she stepped inside. Conversations paused. Laughter softened. The room had already decided that day 2 needed an explanation. The staff meeting happened without her. So did the players' only huddle. No one said her name, but everyone circled it. Veterans talked about balance, about chemistry, about respecting the process. Words that sounded neutral but landed sharp. Aya Wilson listened, arms crossed, face unreadable. Kelsey Plum leaned back, eyes narrowed. Aaliyah Boston stared at the floor, caught between admiration and loyalty. Practice started with structure so tight it felt restrictive. Sets called early. Reads predetermined. Pace slowed. It was control disguised as order. Caitlin adapted, moved the ball, cut hard, defended like her life depended on it. She waited. The ball found her late in the clock, twice. She scored once, assisted once. No celebration. No reaction. Just efficiency. Then the scrimmage reset everything. A blown coverage led to a bucket she wasn't supposed to take. The bench murmured. On the next possession, she recognized the same gap, exploited it again. A veteran barked for the ball. Caitlin waved it off, split the defense, kicked to the corner. Splash. The gym reacted before the staff could stop it. Energy surged. Someone clapped. Someone cursed. The lines between roles blurred. That's when the whistle cut through. Practice stopped cold. The head coach walked onto the floor, clipboard tight in hand, voice measured but firm. The message was about discipline. About trust. About running what's called. It wasn't directed at anyone, but everyone knew who it landed on. Caitlin nodded, apologized, took it. She always took it. The next play was designed away from her. She still ended up with the ball, late, under pressure. She hit a step back that ripped through the net. No smile. No stare. Just a jog back on defense. The bench went quiet. After practice, the first text leaked. It wasn't dramatic. That's what made it lethal. A vague line from an anonymous source about concerns inside Team USA regarding fit and hierarchy. Within minutes, it multiplied. Social media spun it into conflict. Pundits reframed day 2 as a problem, not a performance. Clips from college resurfaced. Old narratives reactivated. Too ball dominant. Too flashy. Too soon. Caitlin saw it all on her phone in the locker room, the glow reflecting off her face as teammates changed around her in silence. No one defended her publicly. No one condemned her either. The absence was louder than any take. That night, another meeting happened. This time, Caitlin was invited. It wasn't confrontational. It was worse. Calm voices. Concerned expressions. The language of compromise. She was praised for her talent, her work ethic, her impact. Then came the pivot. Questions about role acceptance. About adjusting to a system built on experience. About whether she could be effective without dominating the ball. She answered honestly. She said she could adapt. She said she had adapted. She said winning was the priority. She didn't say what she was thinking. That adaptation shouldn't mean erasure. The room nodded. Notes were taken. Nothing was decided. Or so it seemed. The shocking twist landed the next morning, quietly, efficiently, with the weight of a decision that pretended to be temporary. The practice plan was updated. Lineups shuffled. Caitlin's minutes in the primary scrimmage were cut. Not removed. Reduced. Framed as experimentation. She didn't react. She played harder. With fewer touches, she defended like a disruptor, blew up actions, forced turnovers, sprinted the floor. When she did get the ball, she scored anyway. A pull-up from deep. A drive through contact. A pass threaded through traffic that drew a stunned laugh from the sideline. The gym buzzed again despite the plan. And that's when it happened. Mid-scrimmage, a collision. Not dirty. Not malicious. Just basketball. Caitlin hit the floor hard, popped up immediately, waved off help. The play continued. She hit another three. On the next possession, she winced. Subbed out. Wrapped. Ice on her knee. The whispers returned, sharper this time. Availability. Durability. Risk. A minor issue became a talking point. The narrative shifted with alarming speed. What started as fit became caution. What started as caution became justification. By afternoon, the second leak hit harder than the first. A report suggesting Team USA was evaluating all options and that nothing is guaranteed. Fans erupted. Some called it politics. Some called it protectionism. Some blamed Caitlin for forcing the issue. Others accused the program of fear. Inside the facility, the temperature dropped. Caitlin sat alone, knee elevated, watching practice continue without her. She felt the weight of it then, not the pain, but the possibility. That excellence, when it threatens comfort, invites resistance. That dominance, when it arrives early, gets reframed as disruption. A staffer passed by, paused, offered a tight smile. "We'll see how it goes," they said. That night, Caitlin got a call she wasn't expecting. Not from her agent. Not from a coach. From someone higher. Someone who didn't speak often, and never without purpose. The message was brief. Careful. Chilling. "This is bigger than a practice," the voice said. "And the next move changes everything." The line went dead. Caitlin stared at her phone, the noise of the day crashing in all at once. Because she finally understood the truth beneath the chaos. This wasn't about whether she belonged. It was about whether the system was ready to let her lead. And tomorrow, that question would force a choice no one could walk back. The fallout didn't wait for confirmation. It detonated the moment the second leak crossed timelines, turning speculation into sides and sides into war. Fans woke up angry. Analysts woke up emboldened. Hashtags formed before breakfast, some defending Caitlin with ferocity, others accusing her of entitlement, of disruption, of forcing a hand that wasn't hers to force. Every clip from day 2 replayed in loops, slowed down, zoomed in, reinterpreted. A made shot became proof. A missed rotation became indictment. Nothing was neutral anymore. Inside the Team USA bubble, the pressure turned suffocating. Teammates avoided eye contact, not out of malice, but fear of being quoted. Group chats went quiet. A few veterans posted vague messages about trusting the process, which only poured gasoline on the fire. Aaliyah Boston liked a tweet supporting Caitlin, then unliked it minutes later. The screenshot lived forever. Kelsey Plum answered a reporter with a smile too tight to be comfortable. Aya Wilson said nothing, which somehow said everything. The league office felt the tremor immediately. Phones rang. Sponsors asked questions that sounded polite, but carried consequences. Executives debated optics versus outcomes. Kathy Engelbert's name trended without a single quote attached. The silence interpreted as strategy or avoidance, depending on who you asked. The conversation stopped being about basketball and started being about power. Who holds it, who protects it, and who gets punished for challenging it. Caitlin stayed off social media, but it found her anyway. Friends sent screenshots she didn't ask for. Family tried to shield her, failed. Former coaches reached out with encouragement wrapped in warnings. "They'll test you," one message read. "Don't flinch." Another was colder. "This is how it goes when you're too good too fast." She iced her knee, watched film, replayed the collision in her head until it lost meaning. The pain wasn't the issue. The waiting was. The team meeting that afternoon was supposed to calm things down. It did the opposite. The language was careful, almost clinical. Commitment. Unity. Distractions. No names. No accountability. Caitlin listened, hands folded, pulse steady. She wanted to speak, to cut through it, to say the thing everyone was dancing around. That excellence isn't a threat unless you let it be. But she didn't. She had learned when silence was safer. She just hadn't learned when it stopped being fair. Outside the room, former players took sides publicly. Some praised her courage, called the pushback predictable, systemic. Others questioned her readiness, framed the controversy as a lesson in humility. The split was generational, ideological, personal. Every take revealed more about the speaker than the situation, But the damage landed on one person all the same. By evening, the rumor mill spun darker. Whispers about roster flexibility, about managing egos before Paris, about protecting culture. Each word carried a blade. Fans showed up outside the facility with signs, half in support, half in protest, chanting different truths at the same time. Security tightened. The bubble thickened. Caitlin watched from a window, anonymous behind glass, feeling oddly calm. Chaos had a way of clarifying priorities. Then the official statement dropped. Short, polished, non-committal. It praised competition, reiterated standards, and confirmed that evaluations were ongoing. No reassurance. No denial. The ambiguity was intentional, and everyone knew it. The market reacted instantly. Debate shows went wall to wall. Former teammates were asked to choose. Silence was no longer an option. Caitlin finally spoke, to her parents late, voice steady. She said she was fine. She said she trusted her work. She didn't say she felt the weight of a decision being shaped without her in the room. She didn't say she wondered if dominating had become a liability. She hung up and stared at the ceiling, counting breaths, reminding herself why she played in the first place. The next morning, practice was optional. Some showed. Some didn't. Caitlin did. She shot alone, rebounder silent, sweat hitting the floor in rhythmic taps. A staffer watched from a distance, scribbling notes that might matter or might be theater. The gym felt empty and electric at the same time. As she left, a reporter shouted a question from beyond the rope. "Do you feel targeted?" Caitlin paused. She turned, eyes clear, voice calm. "I feel prepared," she said. The clip went viral in seconds. That afternoon, an internal email leaked. Just a subject line, no body. Final determinations. No context. No clarity. Just a deadline. And as the sun dipped, Caitlin's phone buzzed again. One message. One sentence. From someone who never texted without intent. Be ready to decide before they do. The screen went dark, and for the first time since day 2, Caitlin felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Because the fallout had finally reached the point where waiting was no longer an option. The call came at dawn, quiet and precise, the kind that doesn't wake a phone so much as summon a decision. Caitlin listened without interrupting, eyes fixed on the ceiling, breath steady as the words landed one by one. The offer wasn't framed as an escape. It was framed as leverage, a path that changed the math overnight. She dressed without rushing and drove through streets still half asleep, the city holding its breath. By the time she arrived at the facility, the atmosphere had shifted again, tighter, colder, rehearsed. Faces carried the calm of people who believe they're steering events, not reacting to them. The final meeting was scheduled. The determinations were coming. And Caitlin realized, with a clarity that surprised her, that the outcome mattered less than who owned the choice. Inside the room, the language was smoother than ever. Appreciation, opportunity, the future. The plan included her, conditionally. A role described as flexible, dynamic, evolving. The subtext was unmistakable. Patience now, permission later. Caitlin nodded, asked one question about responsibilities, another about accountability. The answers were careful. Non-committal. Safe. Then she asked for a moment. Silence followed her into the hallway, where a single window cut light across the floor. She checked her phone. Messages stacked like dominoes, support, warning, speculation. One thread stood apart, recent and deliberate. A contract outline. Numbers that dwarfed expectations. A commitment to build around her skill set immediately, unapologetically. A guarantee of autonomy that felt radical by comparison. She thought about day 2, the way the gym had bent, the way control had frightened people who mistook hierarchy for harmony. She thought about the collision, the ice, the whispers. She thought about being praised with limits, celebrated with caveats. She thought about what leadership actually meant. When she returned to the room, the energy changed. Not because she raised her voice, she didn't, but because certainty has weight. She spoke calmly, respectfully, with gratitude. She acknowledged the program, the legacy, the honor. Then she set a boundary. She asked for clarity in writing, timelines, defined responsibilities. She asked for trust that didn't require shrinkage. The pause stretched. Eyes flicked. Notes were adjusted. Someone suggested taking it offline. Caitlin declined. She wasn't confrontational. She was composed. And composition can be more disruptive than anger. The response came dressed as reassurance. They valued her. They believed in her. They needed time. Time, she realized, was the currency she no longer owed. She thanked them again and stood. The chair legs scraped softly against the floor, a small sound that echoed louder than expected. Outside, a camera caught her exiting. The clip spread instantly. Analysts froze frames, dissected posture, searched for tells. Fans read meaning into the way she held her bag. Caitlin drove away, phone silent, thoughts sharp. By noon, the leak hit, not from her camp. A story suggesting indecision on both sides, hedged bets, mutual evaluation. It was designed to soften the blow of what was coming, to control the narrative before it broke free. Caitlin read it once, then didn't open it again. She met the caller from Dawn in a private office overlooking the city. The terms were restated, tightened, clarified. This wasn't a rebellion, it was a declaration. The structure promised something rare, alignment. No theater, no subtext, just responsibility matched to trust. As the meeting ended, another notification lit her screen. A text from someone inside the program, brief and honest. They didn't think you'd do this. Caitlin smiled, not out of spite but relief. Being underestimated had always sharpened her edges. She signed nothing yet. She asked for 1 hour. Back in her car, she called her parents, then her agent. She weighed loyalty against self-respect, legacy against leverage. She imagined the headlines that would follow either choice, the praise and the backlash. She imagined the court, the only place where noise dissolved into clarity. At the facility, the final determinations were drafted without her in the room. Names slotted, roles defined, a system preserved. When the document reached the top, a pause followed. Someone asked if they should wait. The answer was no. At the same moment, Caitlin typed a message with steady hands. 3 sentences. Clear, professional, final enough to change trajectories, open enough to leave a door ajar. She didn't send it immediately. Outside, fans gathered again, phones raised, voices colliding. Inside offices across the league, phones buzzed as word began to move faster than confirmation. Sponsors recalculated. Commentators cleared their schedules. The sport leaned forward. Caitlin looked at the city once more, thumb hovering. The choice wasn't about walking away. It was about walking toward something that matched the way she played. Decisive, fearless, exact. Her phone vibrated with one last message, time-stamped seconds ago. From the same high place as before. If you do this, there's no undo. Caitlin exhaled, smiled to herself, and hit send. Across the league, a silence fell. The kind that arrives right before history turns, and no one yet knows which side of it they're on. This is where you decide if this moment fades into noise or forces change. What you just witnessed isn't a practice story, a roster rumor, or another debate segment waiting to be replaced tomorrow. It's a live stress test of how women's basketball treats power, confidence, and generational talent when it refuses to wait its turn. Caitlin Clark didn't just make a choice. She exposed a system that depends on compliance more than courage. If this story stirred something, anger, pride, unease, excitement, that reaction matters. Because leagues don't shift when executives talk. They shift when fans refuse to accept rehearsed answers. When accountability becomes louder than optics. When support turns into pressure that can't be smoothed over with statements and smiles. So don't scroll past it. Talk about it. Share it. Argue about it. Ask why excellence still scares institutions built to showcase it. Ask why leadership is praised until it's undeniable. Ask why fit becomes the excuse when talent demands trust. These questions don't threaten the game, they protect it. If you believe women's basketball deserves honesty instead of choreography, make your voice impossible to ignore. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because the fallout isn't finished. Comment with your take, even if it goes against the grain. Especially if it does. Send this story to someone who still thinks this is just about rotations and minutes. The people in power are watching reaction metrics more closely than film right now. They're measuring sentiment. They're testing whether this moment will pass. What you do next helps decide whether the next Caitlin Clark walks into opportunity or into resistance disguised as tradition. This isn't about choosing sides. It's about choosing standards. Standards for transparency, for merit, for letting greatness be what it is without apology. Because the next decision will happen quietly, behind closed doors, justified as necessary. Unless the noise outside gets too loud to ignore. Stay here. Stay vocal. Stay uncomfortable. Because this story isn't ending with a press release. It's ending with consequences. By the time the doors shut for the next full-team session, the conflict was no longer theoretical. It had a pulse. It lived in the way assistants avoided standing too close together, in the way veterans stretched a little longer, in the way Caitlin Clark felt the gym lean toward her before she ever touched the ball. Everyone knew the decision clock was ticking. Everyone also knew that once the first irreversible move happened, there would be no neutral ground left. The staff opened with film. Clips from day 2 rolled silently on the screen. Possessions spliced tight, angles cropped, context removed. Caitlin recognized the edit immediately. The makes were there, but muted. The passes were shown without the movement that created them. The missed rotation was isolated and replayed twice. It wasn't dishonest. It was curated. She watched without expression, hands folded, heart steady. This was the language of pressure, and she was fluent. When the floor work began, the tone sharpened. Sets were called fast, then faster, like the pace itself was being tested. Caitlin ran them clean, hit the first read, then the second. The ball found her less often than it should have, but when it did, the results forced acknowledgement. A pull-up that split coverage. A skip pass that cracked a zone before it formed. A defensive read that turned into a runout. Each play pulled the room tighter, like a rope being stretched between two immovable points. Aya Wilson guarded her on the next possession. The matchup hummed. Respect and rivalry coiled together. Caitlin probed, reset, waited for the help to blink. It didn't. She stepped back anyway. Net. No celebration. Aya nodded once, jaw set. The gym exhaled, then held its breath again. On the bench, an assistant whispered to the head coach. A rotation shifted. Caitlin was moved off ball, then parked in the corner. The message was subtle but clear. Demonstrate value without gravity. She complied. She cut hard, dragged defenders, opened lanes that others finished. The scoreboard didn't credit her, but the flow did. Still, the notes being taken didn't slow. Midway through the session, the tension cracked. A loose ball skittered free, bodies converged, and Caitlin dove without hesitation. Elbows clipped. Knees tangled. The whistle came late. She hit the floor, popped up, eyes flashing, not angry, just awake. A veteran snapped at her because dominance that forces acknowledgement removes plausible deniability. You can debate fit. You can argue experience. You can preach patience. But when a player bends the game in real time, excuses thin. The staff huddled during a water break, voices low, shoulders tight. Caitlin drank, stretched, listened without looking. She knew what was coming. She'd lived this before in different buildings under different banners. When the answer is inconvenient, the question changes. The first shocking twist didn't arrive with a bang. It arrived as protocol. A whistle. A stoppage. The head coach addressed the group, voice even. There would be a load management adjustment. Caitlin would sit the remainder of the scrimmage. Not because of injury. Not because of performance. Because of long-term planning. The words landed like ice. The gym froze. Someone laughed, then stopped. Caitlin nodded once, calm enough to be mistaken for acceptance. She walked to the bench, wrapped a towel around her shoulders, eyes never leaving the floor. The scrimmage resumed, but the rhythm was gone. Possessions clanged. Reads came late. The space she'd been creating collapsed inward. The staff watched, pens still moving. On the bench, Caitlin felt the temperature shift from scrutiny to containment. This wasn't about rest. It was about control. She understood the calculus instantly. Limit exposure, limit leverage. If the conversation was about uncertainty, certainty had to be rationed. The cameras outside didn't know yet. Inside, everyone did. After practice, the hallway became a maze of half-closed doors and carefully timed exits. Caitlin showered quickly, dressed quietly, and checked her phone. Missed calls. A voicemail marked urgent. A text from her agent. We need to talk now. Another from a former national team star. They're scared of the ripple. She stepped into a side room and returned the call. The voice on the other end didn't waste time. A media inquiry had landed, off the record sourced. The angle was forming. Internal debate, questions of readiness, safeguarding chemistry. Nothing false. Everything framed. Caitlin listened, eyes closing briefly, then opened them again. What do you advise? She asked. The pause said everything. You don't blink, came the answer. But you prepare. Prepare for what became clear minutes later. A second, more explosive twist broke before dinner. A prominent analyst went live with new information, citing multiple sources. The claim wasn't that Caitlin was being cut. It was worse. It was that her role was being reconsidered in light of recent intensity. The implication dripped: too much, too soon, too disruptive. The clip raced across feeds, context-free and contagious. Teammates texted privately, supportive but cautious. No one wanted to be the quote that tipped the balance. Aya sent a single line: "Keep hooping." Aaliyah sent a heart. Others stayed silent. Caitlin didn't hold it against them. She knew the rules of proximity to power. That evening's meeting was called with short notice. Players sat in a circle, staff on the periphery. The tone was unity forward, language polished. Distractions were acknowledged. Focus was emphasized. The floor opened. Caitlin waited. When she spoke, it was measured. She said she wanted to win. She said she respected the process. She said she would do whatever was asked, then added one sentence that cut through the room. "Just tell me what the standard is, and I'll meet it." The silence that followed was the answer she feared. Not disagreement. Not correction. Ambiguity. Because ambiguity preserves power. Afterward, a staffer pulled her aside, gentle and rehearsed. "This is complicated," they said. "There are forces you don't see." Caitlin met their eyes. "I see the court," she replied. "That's enough." The next morning, the practice plan changed again. Smaller groups. Segmented reps. Caitlin was placed with a unit that made little sense on paper. Less spacing, fewer shooters. A test disguised as opportunity. She ran it anyway, elevated it, bent it toward coherence. The gym buzzed despite itself. Someone clapped. Someone else frowned. That's when the leak escalated into something uglier. A clip surfaced, short, grainy, cropped from an angle that hid as much as it showed. Caitlin's dive. The collision. The pop-up. Captioned as recklessness. Shared without context. Amplified by accounts that thrived on friction. The discourse turned sharp. Courage reframed as selfishness. Intensity reframed as risk. Caitlin watched it once and closed the app. She didn't need to see it again. She felt the pattern clicking into place. When excellence resists containment, it gets reframed as liability. The staff convened again. This time, Caitlin wasn't invited. Decisions were discussed in hypotheticals. Scenarios mapped. Optics weighed. The language was protective, not punitive, which made it harder to fight. Protect the team. Protect the athlete. Protect the brand. Protection, she knew, was the softest cage. When she was finally called in, the message was delivered with care. Nothing final. Nothing official. Just a suggestion that stepping back could be strategic. That patience now could pay later. That the noise might die down if she let it. Caitlin listened, then asked one question. "If I step back," she said, "who steps forward?" No one answered. She left the room with her shoulders squared and her mind clear. Outside, the sun was bright and different. Her phone buzzed again, another number she didn't recognize, another voice that did. High level. Calm. Direct. "There's a window opening," the voice said. "But it closes fast." Caitlin leaned against the wall, the weight of the building pressing in. She thought about day 2. About the way the game had responded when she stopped waiting. About the way control had triggered resistance. About what leadership actually costs. She looked down at her hands, steady as ever. Inside, the staff finalized a draft plan that assumed her compliance. Outside, the story was already mutating. Somewhere between those two realities, Caitlin made a decision that would force everyone to choose between comfort and truth. And as she lifted her phone to make the call, the future of the roster, and the narrative, hung on whether she would ask for permission one last time, or take space that couldn't be given back. The call Caitlin made didn't echo. It detonated quietly, the way decisions with consequences always do. By the time the team reconvened that afternoon, the air had changed again, denser, sharper, charged with something that didn't belong to the staff anymore. Word travels fast in elite rooms, and whatever had been whispered into phones had already started rearranging loyalties. Practice opened with controlled chaos. Pace drills blurred into situational reps, and the staff watched like hawks counting mistakes that weren't being made. Caitlin was slotted into another experimental unit, but this time the instruction came with a caveat delivered too casually. Play within it. The phrase landed wrong. She did exactly that, then stretched within until it snapped. 2 possessions in, she orchestrated a sequence so precise it forced defenders into indecision. A flare here. A hard cut there. A bounce pass that threaded 3 bodies. The finish wasn't hers, but the credit couldn't be misplaced. Even the skeptics felt it. That's when the whistle cut through, abrupt and unnecessary. The rep was reset. A coach corrected spacing that had been perfect. The correction wasn't about basketball. It was about reminding the room who controlled the flow. Caitlin didn't argue. She smiled once, a small, private thing, and nodded. Then she went back to work, eyes burning, jaw set. Every move after that was louder than words. She took charges. She communicated early. She erased mistakes before they happened. The more she stabilized the unit, the more the tension spiked. It was like watching someone patch a leak everyone else was pretending didn't exist. Off the floor, the escalation turned ugly. A second analyst chimed in, this time with concerns about adaptability. Another clip circulated, spliced to imply friction where there was none. Anonymous quotes bloomed like algae, sources say. Insiders believe. The narrative hardened into something portable, something fans could carry into comment sections and throw. Caitlin's name trended again, paired with words that cut at the edges. Selfish, risky, and proven. None of it matched the gym. All of it affected decisions. Inside the locker room, the temperature fractured. Veterans exchanged glances. Younger players stayed quiet, watching the ground. Aya broke the silence once, loud enough to reset the room. "We hoop," she said. It wasn't a rebuke. It was a lifeline. Caitlin met her eyes, gratitude flashing, and nodded. But the politics were already in motion. That evening, a closed-door meeting was convened without players. Schedules were rearranged. Media availabilities were tweaked. A contingency plan was drafted that hinged on a phrase no one wanted to say out loud. Optionality. Keep options open. Manage variables. Caitlin was a variable now, not because of performance, but because of gravity. The second major twist hit when an unexpected name entered the conversation. A senior league voice reached out, not to the team, but to Caitlin's representation. The message was couched in diplomacy, soaked in concern. The league wanted harmony. The league wanted focus. The league wanted the story to stop eclipsing the basketball. And then came the suggestion, floated like a favor. A pause could be mutually beneficial. A recalibration. A step back that looked like maturity. When Caitlin heard it, something cold settled behind her ribs. This wasn't about the roster anymore. This was about precedent. She asked a single question through her agent. "If I pause," she said, "does the standard pause too?" The answer didn't come. The next morning, practice attendance was limited. Cameras barred. Notes restricted. The environment tightened into something almost claustrophobic. Caitlin arrived early anyway, headphones in, stretching in silence. When she looked up, she saw Kathy Engelbert standing near the sideline, flanked by two staffers she didn't recognize. The sight landed heavy. This wasn't routine. This was oversight. The drills were crisp. The effort immaculate. Caitlin was surgical, conserving nothing. On one possession, she slipped a screen, drew two defenders, and fired a no-look that split them both. On another, she closed out so hard the shooter hesitated and traveled. The gym reacted in involuntary murmurs. Engelbert watched without expression, arms folded. Then came the stoppage. The head coach gathered the group and announced a simulated endgame. Clock management. Pressure reps. Caitlin's name wasn't called. A murmur rippled. Aya frowned. Paige glanced over. The omission was deafening. Caitlin stayed standing, hands on hips, breathing steady. When the scrimmage ran without her, the possession stalled. The clock bled. A contested look clanged. Reset. This time, the coach looked at Caitlin. A beat passed. 2. Finally, a nod. She stepped in like she'd been waiting all her life. One dribble to draw help. Kick. Relocate. Back. Catch. Rise. The shot fell clean, final. The gym erupted before anyone could stop it. Even Engelbert's posture shifted, just slightly. That was the moment the room split. Because excellence that arrives on cue exposes intent everywhere else. After practice, Caitlin was pulled aside again. This time by a different voice, one with less warmth and more authority. The conversation was careful, but the edges showed. There are concerns, she was told. About optics. About balance. About what happens if we center this too much. Caitlin listened, then replied softly. What happens if you don't? The reply came as a smile that didn't reach the eyes. We'll see. Minutes later, the third twist detonated across social feeds. A leaked itinerary appeared, allegedly showing reduced reps and adjusted roles for upcoming sessions. Caitlin's name was there, circled, annotated, minimized. Whether it was real or doctored didn't matter. It felt real enough to ignite outrage. Fans flooded timelines. Former players weighed in. The debate shifted from fit to fairness, from readiness to resistance. The team group chat went silent. That night, Caitlin sat alone in her room, lights low, phone face down. She thought about Iowa gyms and empty bleachers, about nights when belief had been the only fuel. She thought about the cost of making rooms uncomfortable and the price of letting comfort dictate ceilings. The call she'd made earlier buzzed back to life, an update, concise and seismic. "There's a path," her agent said. "It's not clean, but it's yours." "What's the catch?" Caitlin asked. "You have to force the issue. Publicly. Or they'll do it quietly." She closed her eyes. The weight settled. This wasn't a basketball decision anymore. It was a line in the sand. The next morning, she arrived with resolve sharpened into calm. Warm-ups blurred. The ball felt light. The noise faded. When media gathered unexpectedly outside the facility, Caitlin noticed, but didn't flinch. Inside, the staff exchanged glances. They knew something was coming. They just didn't know from where. The escalation reached its peak when Caitlin was handed a revised schedule mid-session, slipped to her without ceremony. Fewer reps, fewer minutes. She folded it carefully, tucked it into her bag, and finished the drill anyway. Harder than before, cleaner than ever. When the final whistle blew, she didn't head to the locker room. She walked toward the doors where the cameras waited, her phone already buzzing with a drafted statement she hadn't approved yet. Behind her, the staff scrambled to contain a story that had slipped its leash. Ahead of her, the microphones rose. And as Caitlin took a breath, deciding whether to speak now or hold one more card, the entire structure of control teetered on whether silence would protect her, or finally betray her. This is the moment where the noise either swallows the truth, or the fans force the truth into the light. Because what's happening around Caitlin Clark right now isn't just about minutes, rotations, or practice reps. It's about power. It's about who gets to define excellence, and who gets told to wait their turn when they're already changing the game in real time. If you've watched this unfold and felt that tightening in your chest, that frustration, that disbelief, you're not alone. Millions see it. Millions feel it. And the reason this story keeps escalating isn't because Caitlin is loud. It's because she's undeniable. Every clipped rep, every leaked narrative, every carefully worded concern is proof that her presence is forcing conversations some people never wanted to have. Now the league is at a crossroads. Fans are watching. Players are watching. History is watching. Silence will be read as permission. Deflection will be read as guilt. And accountability, real accountability, only happens when the audience refuses to look away. So don't scroll past this. Don't shrug this off as just sports. This is about fairness, about respect, about whether the WNBA embraces the moment it's been given or fumbles it out of fear of change. If you believe performance should matter more than politics, say it. If you believe excellence shouldn't be managed down to protect comfort, say it louder. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this story. Challenge the narratives being pushed without evidence. Force the conversation into the open where it belongs. Because Caitlin Clark has already stepped onto the line and dared the system to respond. Now it's your turn. Will the league rise to meet this moment? Or will it be remembered for trying to silence the very energy that could define its future? Stay locked in. This story isn't ending quietly.